Yeah, I think there's a general feeling of guilt because of the Holocaust, and one can understand obviously why. I mean, Europe has been implicated in anti Jewish acts for hundreds and hundreds of years, culminating in the genocide of most of the Jewish population in Europe. But this guilt, Christian white European guilt, uh, should have nothing to do with Palestinians. If they expect that Palestinians and Arabs in general should keep paying for European guilt, they're wrong. It's not our fault. We had nothing to do with the Holocaust. We condemn the Holocaust. We think it's a horrible genocide. But we had nothing to do with it. Palestinians and Arabs should not pay in our rights what Europeans had done. And I think by thinking that they can bribe us, continue bribing some corrupt Palestinian Arab leadership to concede on our rights in order to shut up and accept Israeli injustice and oppression as fate, they're also wrong. It can work for a certain number of years, and they are doing it. They're bribing us in all kinds of ways, trying to buy our silence, but it's not working. Europe is investing a lot in Palestinian so-called security forces instead of education, health, and instead of helping us get rid of the occupation to start with. So what we need is not charity, what we need is solidarity. And there's a huge difference between them. Charity means that you've accepted your fate, you've accepted the master-slave relationship, and you just live with it. We'll just give you some more bones to improve your life. But otherwise, you should accept your fate as a slave.
More what to improve your life?
More bones.
Bones, is it?
Bones.
Bones.
Yeah.
Oh, bones, like for dogs.
Throw more bones to you.
Okay.
To improve your life. So we think that this doesn't work. Not in the 21st century. It won't work. And Palestinian continued resistance to Israel and to Zionist oppression, Lebanese resistance to Israel's occupation, and so on, show very clearly that it's not working. You can't buy our silence, you can't bribe us into conceding our basic rights. As every human being on earth, we deserve our basic rights, we deserve our political human rights under international law. We're not asking for anything special, anything more than our rights. Part of this game is the symmetry, where Europeans, the US, Canada, and I'm talking about the establishment, not the people, tend to talk about this conflict. To start with, using conflict language already assumes, the premise is that you have two symmetric parties, like husband and wife who have some domestic problem that they have to talk about and sort out. And this assumption is not just wrong, it's so deceptive. In a colonial relationship, where your land is being lost, your basic rights are denied, there is no symmetry. And all the talk about from the Israel lobby and its lobby groups in Ireland, Britain, and the US elsewhere, about no one has a monopoly on victimness and that everyone is suffering and that we want peace and so on. Well, Nazi Germans suffered too. What does that mean? I mean, many innocent Germans suffered in World War II, and that's a fact. Dresden was bombed indiscriminately, and thousands of innocent Germans were slaughtered. Yes, of course, that's a war crime. It's a horrendous war crime. But we keep things in context. We never say that there's moral equivalence between Germany and its victims. We always have to keep things in perspective. Similarly, with Israel, there is no moral symmetry between Israel and the Palestinians. Yes, there are some innocent Israelis that are being hurt, and the best way to end all kind of attacks on civilians, which I'm completely against, is by ending the root causes of this oppression system, ending Israeli apartheid and occupation, allowing Palestinian refugees their UN-sanctioned right to return, is the best way to end all violence. So it's not like violence is ingrained in us. It's not like there's a communal or tribal hatred that's been going on. And Europeans tend to forget that. We did not have anti-Semitism, pogroms, massacres that they had in Christian Europe, in the Arab East. Throughout the Arab Islamic world, we did not have pogroms and massacres against Jewish communities. They were part of the populace, they're part of the civil society, they were part of civilization since time immemorial. They've always assumed various diverse positions in society, from merchants to peasants to translators to writers to poets and so on, musicians and so on and so forth. So we did not have the same discrimination that they had in Christian Europe. So they can't superimpose their model on us. We've only with Zionist conquest did this violence and this hatred and come about. It's not ingrained, it's not cultural. It's completely related to Israel's oppression and Palestinian and Arab resistance to oppression. And again, there's no symmetry. Part of the bribing process that the European establishment, the US, Australia, and others are involved in is spending millions and millions of dollars on any project of so-called coexistence and reconciliation and dialogue. And this is a truly thriving industry now in occupied Palestinian territory, where any Palestinian mediocre artist, writer, NGO can get together with an Israeli counterpart and sell just about any project to the EU and get lots of money. You can really get rich in these projects. And the morally weaker types of people, who are, as I said, mediocre to start with, and they want easy money, they go for these projects. In an environment that's so starved for resources, some people get weaker and they are ready to fall for such projects. So, as a dance choreographer, for example, if I were to do a Romeo and Juliet with an Israeli counterpart, I will get pretty rich. I mean, theaters in Europe will open up for this production, and I can get pretty famous and rich. But at what price? You're projecting a very deceptive image of the possibility of coexistence despite oppression. So it's as if an Israeli and a Palestinian choreographers can be normal, in a normal relationship. And in the Arab world we call this normalization or tatbi'a, which means turning something that's abnormal into something that looks normal, but it's not. The relationship between Israelis and Palestinians can never be normal until this enslavement ends. This multi-tiered oppression, occupation, apartheid, and denial of refugee rights ends. When this ends, yes, we can have normal relations with Israelis, not as colonial masters, as human beings. So to go back to the basics, where humans can deal with each other as humans, women, gender projects, youth groups, musicians, dancers, and so on, is when there is no oppression. In some projects where you have, let's say, Israeli musicians working with Palestinian musicians, and then after the project is over, Israeli musicians go back to man checkpoints, military checkpoints in the occupied West Bank. Is it without any sense of irony, without any...
Sorry, who goes back? The Israeli goes...
The Israeli musicians, the violinists, would go back the next day and man checkpoints. Stand at military checkpoints, preventing Palestinian pregnant women from accessing hospitals, students from going to school, teachers from going to universities, and so on. What happened with the coexistence image a day before? It is all propaganda for Israel's purposes to say that we can have a normal life. And you Western countries continue to invest in Israel, continue to come to Israel and treat us as a normal state because look at the Palestinians. They're fine with us. There's coexistence despite oppression, despite injustice. That's why these projects are truly harmful, truly destructive for any pursuit of justice and international law.
Usually when I watch TV and my Western friends watch TV, they're used to Israelis speaking very good English with a strong American accent, and we rarely get Arabs who speak English well. Mm-hmm. Many of my friends, they don't know that that you can have even Muslim speaking in a rational, direct, clean language. Can you reflect on that? Where did you learn to...
Well, I went to school in the US. I went to college in the US. But it's also a fact, I mean, yes, English is not our first language. Arabs speak Arabic. We're not expected to speak English. But there's plenty of good spokespeople out there, men and women, who know the language and who can speak very rationally, but they're not selected by the media. The mainstream media goes after either the soft, moderate types who will say what the Western establishment expects them to say. Peace, 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 and no discussion about rights, international law, or justice. Or they'll get the, for lack of a better word, the idiots. Those who know nothing and say nothing of substance and just waste the airtime saying absolutely nothing. And they like them because they stereotype Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims with using those people. Either fanatic, crazy nuts who want to destroy and burn, and that's the image given. That's what the Arabs want. They want to destroy us all and control, and you know.
To be fair, as an Arab personally, I find it very difficult to even speak about this very painful issue without getting emotive. You know, it's like they're expecting us to, while under extreme pain and rights denied, to speak calmly and rationally. So
I think we have to. It's very difficult. Absolutely, it's an emotive issue. I mean, we're living under occupation and apartheid. It's not like we're monitoring it from Iceland. It's under the ashes. We're living it. So it's very painful when you know a friend who has been shot, a friend whose mother was stopped at a checkpoint and had to give birth at a checkpoint. These are not things we read in papers. These are things that are real. We live with them. Despite that, it's extremely important for us to channel this anger, this emotion, into rational, moral argument. Why this has to end. And this is precisely why we've called for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or BDS, against Israel, because it's based on international law, human rights. Yes, it's a punitive, very effective punitive measure against Israel, against its institutions, against companies profiting from Israel's oppression of the Palestinians. And because it is rational and morally consistent, it is extremely threatening to Israel. Some recent research by major Israeli research institutes called the BDS campaign an existential threat. So now they're comparing it to Iran. Imagine. This non-violent civil society campaign of boycotts, divestment, and sanctions is an existential threat. What exactly are we threatening here? We're threatening Israel's oppression, apartheid. Yes, at the end of the BDS campaign, Israel will no longer be a colonial state, nor an apartheid state, nor a state that denies our refugees the right to return. That's what we are delegitimizing, Israel's oppression, racism, and apartheid. And they know that this is very threatening, because you're appealing to a very wide community, as you've seen here in Ireland, in the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, all the major unions in this country. So you're getting a mainstream public supporting BDS against Israel. They see this as something civil, effective, that everyone can do. From boycotting Israeli goods in the supermarket, to boycotting Israeli academic institutions, not going to conferences in Israel, pressuring Irish singers like Bono, U2, and other performers not to go to Israel, not to be complicit in whitewashing Israeli crimes, to pressuring Irish companies like CRH, the cement company, not to continue being complicit in war crimes, building Israel's apartheid wall and settlements, colonial settlements. All this is something that people can do. So BDS is an empowering tool to solidarity people, to the general public in the West, who are fed up with Israel's impunity and being put on a pedestal above the law of nations. People who are fed up with this see BDS as a truly empowering tool where they can assert Palestinian rights in accordance with international law and basic universal rights.